psi inverse dot phi, this thing. There we have also seen that phi square equals identity. This is equal to identity. But what happens when we calculate psi square dot phi square? Psi square, we already know phi square is identity. So this is equal to psi square. Since psi square is not equal to identity, we have psi square is not identity, psi cube is the identity map. We have psi dot phi whole square is not equal to this. Okay. There are only 6 elements in S3, so it doesn't take much time to see that these mappings work for this solution. I need ink. Give me a moment. In S3, show that there are 4 elements. Four elements satisfying x square is equal to identity and 3 elements satisfying y cube equal to identity. So that means there are 4 elements whose squares are equal to the identity and 3 elements whose cubes are equal to the identity. Just have to see what those elements are. Note that E square, identity square is always identity. Identity to the power any integer is identity. In fact, I mentioned that while proving the rules of exponents. So you see, we can prove that using induction, that e to the power n is equal to e for any non-negative integer n and also for negative integer n, which you can prove from the non-negative part. This is equal to identity. Phi square is identity, that we have already seen. And if you go back to the third example, you will also see that phi dot psi square is identity and psi dot phi square is also equal to identity, and these are four distinct elements: E, phi, psi dot phi and phi dot psi. And okay, then comes cube. E cube is identity, psi cube is identity, this we have seen there, and psi cube whole square, or okay, not that thing, psi square whole cube is also equal to identity. Now this comes from here itself. You see, in place of this you can write psi to the power 6 using the second rule of exponents, which is again using that rule, this. So from this part you have E squared, so this is equal to identity. So three elements again in S3 whose cubes are equal to the identity E, psi and psi square. So that's it. Okay. Then exercise 8. If G is a finite group, show that there exists a positive integer n such that a to the power n is equal to identity for all elements a in G. This we have to prove. That means if G is finite, no matter how large G is, we can always find a positive integer n such that this happens for every element A in G. Or before considering anything, we choose an element. Let A belonging to G be any element consider the sequence of elements E, A square, A cube, etc. It goes on. Okay, it's a sequence, means it does not end. It goes on with higher and higher powers of A. If you look at these elements from the definition of integral elements, integral powers of elements in a group, this is A to the power 0 and this is A to the power 1. Now because G is closed, so all of these elements must belong to G. These elements all belong to G, because G is closed. Okay, now comes the finiteness of G. The sequence is an infinite sequence, an infinite list of some symbols, but G is finite and they all have to be in G. So that means if someone goes down this sequence, after some point repetition must occur. You must get something which you have already got before, because otherwise G will not be able to accommodate infinitely many elements, because G itself is finite. So since G is finite, we are bound to get repetitions in the above list. That is, we would have a to the power I is equal to a to the power j for some integers I and j satisfying this. So this is the you can treat it as the first instance of repetition. That is, till you get to a to the power j, you have got, until you get to a to the power j, you have got till a to the power j minus 1. Starting from e, you have so far got j distinct elements among these powers. Right when you hit a to the power j, something from before comes up again, and that thing is a to the power I. So naturally I has to be less than j, strictly less than j, and all the integers that are appearing as exponents, they are non-negative integers, so all of them are greater than or equal to 0. This is bound to happen at some stage. Then a to the power, okay, if we now, or I may write like this, a to the power j minus I is equal to a to the power j minus I dot e. Okay, now e can be written like this. A to the power I dot a to the power minus I. Okay. Oh, that will not actually give me anything. Okay, instead of taking this route, let us do something else. Then multiplying both sides of this equation by a to the power minus I, you can do that either from the left or from the right, it does not matter, because we have already seen from the first rule of exponents that integral powers of a single element commute. So let us do it from the left. Minus I dot a to the power j. This implies on the left hand side we have e. We have already seen this when we proved the rules of exponent. On the right we have a to the power j minus I. note that j minus I is a positive integer. This is very important. Where do we get that from? From this inequality, j minus I is a positive integer. So you see that a positive integral power of a equals identity. That is, there exists a positive integer j minus I for which this power equals identity. So for every a belonging to G, to show the dependence of j minus I on a, we are going to use a notation for j minus I that shows that a, for every a belonging to G, there exists a positive integer na, some integer na, which this suffix a shows that it comes from the element a, it depends on a, such that a to the power na is equal to identity. Define capital N to be the product of all such integers as a varies over G. Keep in mind that this G is a finite group, so it's a product of finitely many positive integers. So it is, first of all, it is well defined, and then the fact that this capital N is again a positive integer. Had G been infinite, question of convergence would have appeared here, but those are something else. Okay, so since G is finite, capital N is, or instead of saying capital N, I should probably say this. The product is well defined, that is, it is meaningful, and capital N is a positive integer. Now, using the rules of exponents, one can see okay, how exactly are we getting this? Using the rules of exponent, one can see that a to the power n is equal to e. Say our group has 3 elements, a1. Okay, so to make the notation somewhat simple, let me take a, b and c. For a we have got na, for b we have nb, for c we have nc. these are positive integers such that these equations are true. You can ask me what is the identity element. Any one of them may be the identity element. We don't care. We don't have to see which one is the identity element. In fact, among these three, one of them will be the identity. For that identity, NE can actually be taken as 1 because e to the power 1 is equal to 1. Okay, so now according to our solution, what is capital N in this case? Capital N is the product of these integers NA into NB into NC. What will happen when we raise a to this power? We will have a to the power NA, NB, NC. Okay. Now using the rules of exponent, you can write it like this. And that equals from this equation NB, NC, and this is equal to E. If in place of A you have B, NA, NB, and C, you can use the rules of exponent, but instead of having NA come inside, you let NB inside. Note that we can do without any problem because multiplication of integers is commutative and associative. So you can change the order however you like, and this will give us NaNC, that is ultimately equal to E. Similarly, C to the power N will also be equal to E. So that's how we know that if we raise any element to the nth power, then that power a to the power n will be equal to E. And the existence of such an integer n for a finite group will ultimately lead to a corollary to one of the very important theorems in finite group theory, namely Lagrange's theorem, which many of you may already know. And this also leads to another idea called the order of an element in a group. We will see those things.